Ferguson with our hands up. When it go down, we woman and man up. They say stay down, and we stand up. Shots we on the ground, the camera panned up. King pointed to the mountaintop, and we ran up.
One day, when the glory comes, it will be ours. It will be ours. Oh, one day, when the war is won, we will be sure. We will be sure. Oh, glory, glory, oh, glory. No, the war is not over. Victory isn't won, but we'll fight on to the finish. And then when it's all done, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory. Oh, we'll cry glory. Oh, glory.
Selma is now for every man, woman, and child. Even Jesus got his crown in front of a crowd. They march with the torch, we gon' run with it now. Never look back, we done gone hundreds of miles. From dark roads, heroes, to become a hero. Facing the League of Justice, his power was the people. Enemy is lethal, a king became regal. Saw the face of Jim Crow under a bald ego. The biggest weapon is to stay peaceful. We sing, our music is the cuts that we bleed through. Somewhere in the dream we had an epiphany. Now we right the wrongs in history. No one can win.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Black History Month programming with filmmaker Fred Kudjo. Welcome, Fred. Thank you to Africana Studies and the Days-Massolo Center for partnering in this. I'm going to pass it off to Professor Carter to welcome our guest speaker. Real quick, just some housekeeping rules. Please, we will open it up for Q&A towards the end. If a lot of people have questions, feel free to unmute or raise your hand feature, whichever one you feel most comfortable. We will have chat engagement. And just for those who would like closed captioning, know that you can go down to the bottom of your Zoom screen and engage closed captioning as we have that feature for this afternoon's talk. So without further ado, Professor Carter.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Paula Lopez and the Days-Massolo Center, and also Professor Merrill also for organizing all of this and bringing us this wonderful speaker. And let me just say a little bit about Fred. For over a decade, the Italian and Ghanaian independent filmmaker and activist Fred Kuwornu has explored the experience of the African diaspora in Italy and beyond through his award-winning film Inside Buffalo, dealing with his experience working with Spike Lee's film Miracle at St. Anna, documenting the lives of members of the 92nd Infantry Buffalo Soldiers Division of the and African Americans in Central Italy. His 2012 film 18 Giustoli, which concerns citizenship and belonging in Europe. Blaq Italiano, 100 Years of Blackness in Italian Cinema, which is a fantastic vision of the presence of people of African descent in Italian film. In a recent interview with the filmmaker in Filmatique, Fred Kudjo has suggested that the international film industry must not just make token overtures towards diversity that can be seen on screen, but importantly complete this cycle with a more, and I quote, diversity off screen, encouraging a new generation of casting directors and producers to be part of the system. And Kudjo insists that we must go further by changing the very nature and texture of the filmic image itself. In his words, and I quote, diversity must exist in the composition of the image you see in film, in which many different people and things appear, subtly forming an image of reality in our minds. Indeed, such representations help shape who we are. And in this way, we can, and I quote Fred again, use these tools to better develop our identities. Please join me in welcoming Fred Kuwornu to Hamilton College.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Dr. Carter, for this awesome presentation. And hopefully when the COVID will end and everything will restore, I will be honored to come back also to the college. And I say hello to everyone who is connecting from everywhere tonight. Actually, I'm connected from Rome because I decided after during the holiday to come back to Italy to visit my family, and so from New York I decided to stay a little bit more here in Italy. And tonight, being in the middle of the Black History Month this year, of course, Black History Month became, I think, well known also in Italy, but also in many other countries, because the conversation around the different time after the tragic event of George Floyd became more international. I mean, it was just present in many countries, but now, especially inside the young generation, became very common to have this conversation. So tonight, the idea was to bringing this talk called Black Lives Matter in Italy and the legacy of colonialism, of course, the Italian colonialism, to explain much more about Italy, and something that sometimes is under-addressed and under-reported, not only in the country, in my country, in Italy, in the media cycle, but also in the educational cycle. But the consequence is that under-reported and sometimes under-addressed outside Italy. So there is a knowledge surely abroad Italy, I imagine in the United States, but also in other countries, about the fact that in Europe, there is a Black presence, an African descent presence, and most of this awareness is about United Kingdom or France, sometimes Germany and Netherlands, but very few really knows about Italy or other countries about Southern Europe, like Greece, or country about Central Europe. So a part of my work is engaged to bring this knowledge in Italy, but outside Italy. And tonight I want to share, and I want to start this talk. In this talk we will have a lot of clips. Some of these clips are produced by my project, other are work connected to the post-production, but I want to start it with a great work that has been released just a few days ago by Vice News America. And it's a work about, it's a real 40 minutes feature documentary about the Italian situation. And I was very surprised and I was very happy, because it's a couple of months that I'm bringing this talk, and I'm very proud that American journalists and activists are bringing a spotlight about the situation of Italy.
In Italy, there is a pre-George Floyd and a post-George Floyd.
Non c'è prevenzione antirazzista in questo paese.
Racist culture will disappear because this process is like a tsunami.
Prima gli italiani.
Nato in Italia, cresciuto in Italia, che non ho ancora la cittadinanza.
Queste persone non dovevano essere qui.
These people were not supposed to be here, and scholars like also Dr. Merrill, that is one of the American scholars that highlights the Blackness in Italy with great books. I mentioned Black Spaces, but there are a lot of articles. Maybe knows this situation much more better than this politician that African descent not only were not supposed to be in Italy, they were in Italy maybe before also the immigration. They were in Italy from the Roman Empire. And so with my project, upcoming project called the BlaqItalia.info, that will be a platform and it will be a project to engage in different way with clips, but also stories about contemporary African descent, blogging, a selection also of person to contact if you want to learn more about Blaq Italy. I produced a couple of years ago a video clip, and I decided to promote on social media, in different social media like Instagram and Facebook. It was a video in which I tried to explain just for a couple of minutes using some historical images that African descent were in Italy since a lot of decades and were not only servants or poor people, but were also head of state like the Duke of Florence, Alexander de' Medici. These are just some examples, and I'm really happy that other activists or other institutions in the last year, especially after the tragic event of George Floyd, try to remember about the Black presence in Italy. For example, the Uffizi Galleries, so the famous museum in Florence, just last year launched a project called the Black Presence, directed by the founder of the Black History Month in Florence, Dr. Justin Thompson, is also an artist, in which they try to explain the history behind the 10 important portraits that are held in the museum, in which are represented African descent. In some cases, there was also an Angolan king that went to Florence to make a diplomatic visit. So we are not talking about only, again, servant or slaves, but also diplomatic or kings or priests like pilgrims or Ethiopians who went in the Vatican City during the 16th century, and they were received by Pope Pio Sixtus, and actually the Vatican decides also at the time to build a church called San Stephen of Abyssinian to host these Ethiopian pilgrims. And there are a lot of examples like that. So the statement they were not supposed to be here, of course, is very common in Italy, but because it's in the Italian culture and mindset, thinking that Africans or Black are coming just in the last year as refugees, as an immigrant. There is also the assumption that are coming by boat, so are much more boat people. They not use airplanes, or they don't ask sometimes visa. And this is another assumption. And so if you give me the permission, I would like also to share something more about my background, because of course, my father is from Ghana, and he came by airplane in 1965 in Italy to study medicine. And then he met my mom, and I was born and raised in a small town of North Italy called Bologna. And since I was a kid, especially the elementary school, middle school, and high school, I felt to be very often the only one in the room, because I didn't find people that looked like me, also around my neighborhood. And this kind of experience was, in one sense, very frequent in my other part of my life, especially in the early career or early stage of my professional career as a DJ and a creative in the company of TV called the Right Channel. And so I feel, in effect, I felt that was difficult to recognize myself in other faces around me. So this is a part of my story, but it's also part of the story of other people and other African descent who came in the 60s. Later on, I will tell you much more about the composition, the current composition of African Italian in Italy. But now we focus on a question. So when Italy start to think about itself as a white nation, if it was a multi-ethnic territory since the Roman Empire, and of course now they totally believe about that. So they have totally a separation to say we are Italian and we are Caucasian, and they are Black Italians, but they are African. This happened in a particular time of the Italian history. In particular, it happened during the unification of Italy. Italy became a unified territory just only officially in the 1861, but Italy completed this unification in 1817, when Rome became again the capital of the new kingdom of Italy. Was a huge process, started from a northwest kingdom, the Kingdom of Piemonte, and this kingdom included, with wars of annexation, other kingdom, in particular the kingdom of Due Sicilia, that was the southern Italy, basically. And during this time of the unification, there was the need, so it was necessary to create a political idea of what was Italy as a political and also cultural territory, and who were the Italians. This was the first tentative in which, for example, a person like this picture, he is a scientist. He was a scientist called Cesare Lombroso, but there were other scientists like, for example, Niceforo. They started to create theories, scientific racist theories that associated the Southern Italians to the Africans. And the reason why there was the unification of Italy was also to bring modernity, to bring prosperity to the south from the north. So the north basically started to define itself, especially the Kingdom of Piemonte, as a Caucasian and European kingdom that was very close to the other kingdom of France, and the Kingdom of Germany, Austria. And so the idea to create one nation was also really important to create the idea of the Italian as a white nation. And this was the time in which, at the end of 19th century, so before Mussolini, the Kingdom of Italy started also the project to create a colonial empire with the first invasion of Ethiopia. And this was also the moment in which definitely Italy as a territory needed to create a separation from Africa that was very close, considering the proximity of the island of Sicily to the coast of North Africa. Of course, this project has been completed with the dictatorship of Benito Mussolini and the other invasion of other countries of Africa. We are talking about Libya, Somalia, Eritrea, and Ethiopia. And with the proclamation of the racial law, officially they were proclaimed in 1938. There were 10 points of this racial law. A lot of points were trying to define that the Italian race was white, and they never exist a multi-ethnic DNA in the Italians since thousands of years. And of course, the target of the racial law were predominantly the Jewish community at the time. But before the racial law, in 1934, in 1935, they were proclaimed other laws that were against the interracial marriage, and also were promoted laws to prevent the fact that a mixed race kid born by Italian male soldiers, basically, and Ethiopian women could acquire the Italian citizenship. Until some years before, it was possible. It was also possible for some of these kids to raise in Italy, and some of the soldiers of the dead of these kids brought their kids to Italy. But after 1934, was definitely impossible. So these were two important steps of the construction of an institutional apartheid for those who were Africans. It doesn't matter if they were a part of the colonies or not. And this law was really strong against the mixed race marriage. And there is an amazing story I want to share, maybe some clip about an important boxer. His name was Leone Iacovacci. So he was Italian because he was born in Congo, but he brought in Italy. But at the age of 16, he moved to United Kingdom. He used a different name, an alias, Jack Walker. So he looked and he said that he was African American, and he started to box in London. And then he went to France where he won a lot of match. And only in 1924, he came back to Italy. There was a huge match with the Italian champion at the time, Mario Bosisio, and only finishing the match, he won, and he said, "I'm Italian, my real name is Leone Iacovacci." And basically, he could box for other 2 or 3 matches, and then he needed to abandon this career because, of course, for the fascist regime was enough that a mixed or a black descendant boxer could be the Italian champion and also European champion of the middleweight of the boxing championship. And this is one of the few stories, of course, connected with this sad time. But the most important situation was the construction of the culture of racism in Italy. And this construction came from everything, from the propaganda, and particularly from the music, from the advertisement, from the education, so inside the school books. And tonight I want to share with you, starting from the music, some of these examples.
Se tu dall'altipiano guardi il mare, morente che si schiava tra gli schiavi, vedrai come in un sogno tante navi, e un tricolore sventola per te, faccetta nera, bella piscina, aspetta e spera che già l'ora s'avvicina, quando saremo insieme a te, noi ti daremo un'altra legge, un'altra re.
So the expansion to Africa was also a way to instill a national cohesion between the Italians and creating the imaging of the others, and also was also an excuse to create a sort of mission. The mission, as you see from this kind of pictures, was just to bring civilization in Ethiopia or into the colonies. Going to build a nation, going to build infrastructures, bridges, school, streets, and there was always the humanization of the black body. And this was in everything. So it was in the poster of advertisement for the propaganda, but also in the classic advertisement for product, or in a magazine for kids. So these are some pictures taken from kids magazine of the time, and in which very often the African kids it's naked, and it's represented as surely inferior and totally different from the white Italian kids. Or there were violent scenes like this one connected to the battles, to the soldiers, so to the Italian soldiers, and to actually this was not an Ethiopian soldiers, but they want to show that the Ethiopian soldiers were like that. And so we have a sort of representation of the blackness, and we are talking about 30, 35, sometimes 40, 1940, that surely was clearly racist, maybe much more than in other countries that they had slaves in the past. Because, and we talk later on, the assumption is that Italy didn't have slaves, so it's not a racist culture. Or this was an assumption for many people. And a different work, a visual work, has been done to describe African descent women. And this is the reason why maybe until 20 years ago, so in the television or in many things in the Italian culture, we can find images that are really similar to the images that we are gonna see now. So basically, there was an intention also to give or to associate the black body of the women with the concept of the Black Venus. The concept of the Black Venus, of course, has a long pedigree also in France and United Kingdom, but has been copied and pasted into also the Italian culture of the time to give this idea that the black body, the black female body, was available for the white male. In particular, this was very useful for creating a sort of propaganda for the soldiers, so to convince Italian men to go to fight into the colonies because they could do everything. And so this is a poster of a film of the 70s, late 70s, so we are not talking anymore colonialism, but you can see how the influence is still strong. This is an advertisement of the 80s for a dessert called Pensiero Stupendo. So this is a speech just to say that this kind of culture, unfortunately, was present until maybe the 80s or the 90s in Italy, because people who were kids at the time, so people who were 10 years old, 20 years old, were people that during the 1950, 1960, 1970 or 80s in Italy, they were simply 40, 50s or 60 or 70 years old, and they were in charge in many things, in particular also cultural things of the Italian culture. And so today I want to share another things because it's connected to the BLM movement in Italy. And this is a speech that has been made at the end of the 60s in Italy, has been made by an important journalist of the time, Indro Montanelli. He was a really important also historian. He wrote a lot of books of history. He was the editor-in-chief for many Italian journals. So he was really well recognized until his death some years ago.
Pare che avessi scelto bene, era una bellissima ragazza bilena di 12 anni, scusatemi, ma in Africa è un'altra cosa. E così l'avevo regolarmente sposata, nel senso che l'avevo comprata dal padre, che mi ha accompagnato insieme alle mogli dei miei ascari, cioè queste mogli degli ascari non è che seguivano la banda, ma ogni 15 giorni raggiungevano la banda. Io non ho mai capito come facessero a trovarci in questo infinito dell'Abissinia dove nessuno sapeva dove, quelli arrivavano, e arrivava anche questa mia moglie con la cesta in testa dove mi portava la biancheria pulita.
Antonio ha detto tranquillamente di aver avuto una sposa, diciamo, di 12 anni, e a 25 anni non si è peritato affatto di violentare una ragazza di 12 anni dicendo ma in Africa queste cose si fanno. Io vorrei chiedere a lui come intende normalmente i suoi rapporti con le donne date queste due affermazioni.
No, signora, guardi, sulla violenza nessuna violenza, perché le ragazze in Abissinia si sposano a 12 anni, non è questione. No, quindi lui era
un piano di consapevolezza dell'uomo, insomma, il rapporto con una bambina di 12 anni è il rapporto con una bambina di 12 anni. Non se lo facesse in Europa riterrebbe di violentare una bambina, vero?
Sì, in Europa sì, ma
ecco,
lì no.
Sì, appunto. Quale differenza crede che esiste dal punto di vista biologico o psicologico anche?
No, guardi,
dal punto di vista del costume.
A 12 anni, non è questione, a 12 anni sposano.
Ma non è il matrimonio che lei intende a 12 anni in Africa, guardi, io ho vissuto in Africa,
sì.
Quindi il vostro era veramente il rapporto violento del colonialista che veniva lì e si impossessava della ragazza di 12 anni, senza assolutamente, ma glielo garantisco, senza assolutamente tener conto di questo tipo di rapporto sul piano umano. Eravate i vincitori, cioè i militari che hanno fatto le stesse cose ovunque, sono stati i vincitori, ovunque si sono presentati gli uomini, si sono presentati come dei militari. La storia è piena di queste situazioni, no?
Noi vogliamo, non so se lei vuole istruirmi
un
processo
affatto, guardi, ho soltanto voluto chiederle per inciso come lei intende, dopo le due interpretazioni, come intende i rapporti con le donne.
The only one to say something was this journalist. Her name was Elvira Vanelli. She was also one of the most important feminists at the time. But it's curious to see that maybe also the other Italian woman didn't say nothing. And he was convinced that it was a marriage, but if it was a marriage, why he didn't brought his wife back to Italy after World War II? Of course, at the time, maybe only the soldiers, the real people who really lived this experience knew the truth. Maybe many Italians, in their common sense, they think that this journalist was saying something true, but we discover later on, there are a lot of documents that this was a custom of many Italian soldiers, and they called Madamato, but it was just a beautiful word to say it was not also prostitution. In many cases were raping or were buying women. So this was a real brutal, one of the brutal parts of the Italian colonialism. And what happened last year? Last year, basically, the city of Milan wanted to celebrate this journalist because he was wounded in the 70s from Italian terrorists of the Red Brigade. And so to celebrate the life of this journalist, they wanted to build a monument in the park where he was wounded. And in Milan, there was a huge protest also organized by Italian Eritrean community and Italian Ethiopian community to say, we can celebrate a person like that with a monument. Unfortunately, the monument has been built, but during the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, there were a lot of initiatives to spray with red the monument and to attach in many cities posters that explain the real story of the woman that has been basically raped by Indra Montanelli. And so to give dignity also to this woman, but also to open a conversation about not only the crimes, but the racist behavior of the colonialism and the fact that this came from a racist culture. As you see, there was a double standard of things that were not allowed to be done in Europe or in Italy, but they think that they could do the same things in Ethiopia. This is only one of the examples that are connected between the past and the present. So the fact that we have a generation not only of historians and scholars that for many years they work into the fields of the post-colonial studies, but for one time, I'm very happy about that, this conversation went out the academia cycle and is in the society. This is in particular also in the African Italian youth, and so are generating initiative to create not only protest, but also creative idea to share the past, but also to see what they can do for the present. So another situation that came last summer, again, I repeat, after the protest in the main squares of Italy for the tragic event of George Floyd, was also connected to the story of Giorgio Marincola. Giorgio Marincola was a Somali-born fighter a partisan that unfortunately he died only 3 days after the end of World War II, because he was still fighting against the Nazis in the border of North Italy with Austria. And so even World War II was ended, he was still fighting, and unfortunately he was killed by a Nazi team in a mountain. So what happened? That Ambaradan, you see, is a place in Ethiopia where Italian's army used gas that were banned at the time from the Convention of the United Nations, but the officer decided to use this gas to defeat the Italian soldiers. Were not able to defeat the Ethiopian soldiers, so they use the gas. And they killed, by the way, thousands of civilians. Actually, it's a matter of fact that after World War II, there was the intention to charge this officer, but the fact that Italy was put immediately into the new strategy of United States in Europe, so the strategy of the North Atlantic Alliance in opposition of Russia, many crimes that were committed by Italians during World War II were in one sense hidden, forgotten. And one of these crimes happened in this place called Ambaradan. And last year, the city of Rome was completing the construction of the third line of the metro railway station of the town. And they wanted basically name one of these stops with this name, Ambaradan. Actually, in Rome, we have just a street with this name. And of course, again, in the common sense, few people maybe know exactly the meaning of Ambaradan. So the protest was organized from a group of association of national partisans, but was also joined by African Italians who are living in Rome, and organization would try to ask to rename the name of the metro stop to celebrate Giorgio Marincola, so to rename the metro with the name Giorgio Marincola. And in August, the council member of Rome decided to effectively to give this name. And so we'll have maybe in the next month the inauguration of the stop, and this stop will keep this name of this Somali Italian partisan, and also they will try to create a wall in which they can explain the real story of Ambaradan. So this is a way not only to celebrate an African descent who was a part of the liberation of Italy, but also a way to bring from the past hidden story like the brutal aggression, not only so the idea of the racist culture, but also brutal violent aggression that were banned also by the United Nations. So this is very connected with the climate that the BLM protest had in United States. They create a great climate outside the United States to be much more proactive, not only in protest, because also United States and United Kingdom, BLM was also associated with other movements that try to bring also a controversy into the past, into the representation of the past. And so this reception was also very strong in Italy for at least 2 or 3 examples of that. So for this reason, I'm saying that personally, from what I investigate in the last 10 years, this is my personal opinion, but I think it's much more common from other side. Social media gave a great tool for a young generation to spread much more quickly situation in which they need to protest, but also they need to create an identity. They need to find a way to create a community sense of belonging and also a strategy. For Italy, I go really back to this picture, Italiani senza cittadinanza. Maybe few of you know, but in Italy, if you are born by immigrants, it doesn't matter if you are born in Italy, but you need to wait 18 years old to apply for the Italian citizenship. So you are not automatically Italian citizen the day in which you are born. And this is, it's a connection again with the past. So when in the 1934, to don't allow for mixed race kids born in Ethiopia to become Italian citizens, they modified the Italian citizenship law. So for this reason, there is a connection with the past, but also we have an institutional racist past. And so of course, it doesn't matter if it's an institutional racism different from United States, but this is a great point for fighting for many Black Italians youth. And actually, so they are not fighting for the police brutality, but they are fighting for the citizenship, the bias, and the racism. And also they are bringing an attention because very often we need to learn from abroad in Italy that Italy has something that is wrong with racism. It's very difficult to find mainstream media Italians that are able to give the same statement. As a matter of fact, that also during the BLM protest in Italy, many important media outlets reported that Italians were struggling and protesting against the brutality and the racism in the United States. They were not protesting about the racism in Italy. Even there were a lot of Black Italians that during this protest, they were holding Italian word and signs with script with word like Italy is not innocent, racism is also here and whatever. So it's funny how sometimes some countries tend to externalize the problem of racism like a problem of United States or Brazil, but not other countries, because they are trying to don't be involved in the conversation in their countries. Until some years ago, it was maybe possible in Italy because the anti-racist movement was much more not cohesive. There was not a lot of cohesion. Sometimes they didn't have the same, there were a lot of immigrants that were trying to do something, but they came from different communities and they have different, of course, approach. Now, by the way, we have also a Black Italian generation born and raised in Italy with a sense of community because they are following the same culture. They created blogs and a community sense of belonging. So they are much more willing to mobilize and also to use creativity and to use part of the Italian culture to bring the attention of these issues. And of course, we have a lot of situations that are like some example that I show you. So situation of amnesia, situation in which even there are things that are terrible, people try to minimize, say, oh no, this was the past, but what is the problem if I use this name or whatever. I make you an example. Maybe you will go to dinner later, later on. So I have this pack of pasta that I show you is called, the brand is Molisana, the pack of pasta is called Abyssine. And this brand, when I came for holiday in December, there was a huge controversy on social media because there was a consumer that went to the supermarket and then he saw the name of this pasta and he saw the name of other two shapes of pasta. Then the other two names were Tripoline. Tripoline, it means is a region in Libya, and the other was Bengazine, because Benghazi is a town and also a region in Libya. So were basically three shapes of pasta with the names of three places that were part of the Italian colonies. Nothing wrong to name, of course, the pasta like that. What is wrong was that this consumer went to the website of the company that produced this pasta, and he started to read the description, and was the description that created this controversy. So I want to show you how this company advertised this name of pasta on their website. Of course, now it's not possible to find anymore because they deleted everything, and also they bring out the market the pasta, and the pasta that I show you, I needed to buy to eBay for a lot of, for 30 euros, I think. So it's now it's expensive. So this was the translation of the word that they used to advertise to make a description of the past. In the 30s, Italy celebrates the season of colonialism with new pasta shapes, Abyssine, Tripolini, Bengasini. And also there is this comment, surely they have a littorio, that means fascist taste. And there were a huge controversy on social media. The company, of course, gave their excuses. They get out from the market the pasta. Even there were, and this is for me something that I can't imagine, even they were defended by important food industry magazine like Gambero Rosso, who have the courage to say that the people who were bringing attention about these wrong things to advertise were aggressors. So were not the advertisement that was aggressor towards people who maybe suffer for this. But by the way, we are in 2020, we are not anymore in 1930 or 1940. Just to say that when we talk about some Italian symbol, and we talk about race, and we talk about colonialism, I don't give for granted that many people that they define to be democratic or anti-racist, they will really understand the question of the situation. But the most funny thing is that the company that produced this pasta, by the way, they get out from the market the 3 shapes of pasta, but I still see last day this pasta called the Cinesine rigate, and the description. The name of this pasta probably comes from the shape reminiscent of the eyes of a Chinese woman. So again, there is the idea of exotic woman. It doesn't matter if are African or Asian, but there is still this idea in 2020 of exploitation of, in one sense, the exotic body of a woman. And of course, as you can imagine, surely there is any diverse work organization in many factories or industries in Italy that can prevent some mistakes like that. So this is, sometimes there are mistakes that they made without the intention really to hurt people or to proclamate fascism again. It's just a total amnesia, and unfortunately a total unworking for creating in Italy, by the way, a diverse environment and also a diverse grammar. So the diversity is like, for me, learning a new language. When you need to learn a new language because you don't know a language, you need also to learn the grammar of this language, or you can think that you can talk this language in your own way and pretend that you are talking a language. So this is unfortunately the idea and the common idea that many Italians have for many things about that. I want to maybe end with I'm undecided because I have a lot of stuff, and yeah, I would like to show you a part of a clip taken by my documentary Blaq Italiano, 100 Years of Blackness in Italian Cinema. I know for sure that many of you have the opportunity to watch it, but I want to use this clip because, again, the idea how they represent in many films or media African descent, it's not really far from the universe in which they were represented 70 years before. Not because there is the intention, of course, to dehumanize or represent as inferior African descent anymore, but there is always this idea of exoticism and always this idea that they not belonging to the nation. So for this reason, I think, again, there is a cultural connection between the present and the past.
Ritrovavo ad aspettare magari un'ora e mezza per poi andare a fare un ruolo, l'extracomunitaria appena arrivata da Lampedusa, oppure la donna dello spacciatore, oppure la prostituta che sta de notte tutta nuda. Io ovviamente dicevo no grazie, mi alzavo e me ne andavo a fare una sfilata o qualcos'altro, quindi non ho mai... Forse non ho mai avuto questa fiducia, anzi si giustificavano dicendomi no, noi cercavamo proprio, che ne so, una ragazza con il naso largo, con le labbrone, proprio che non parlasse bene italiano, e io l'ho guardati così come se volessero raccontare in realtà una storia che non ci rappresenta, che non è la realtà.
I ruoli che vengono scritti al cinema, tutti i ruoli di bassa manovalanza. Ross deve fare per forza il buttafuori, oppure
babysitter o la prostituta.
Il fratello della prostituta nigeriana.
Il lavavetri, autista, la guardia del corpo, terrorista arabo, venditori di tappeti.
La mamma di qualcuno africano, brasiliano.
L'immigrato clandestino.
Sempre una disgraziata nullatenente, analfabeta e ignorante.
This is a part of my documentary of 5 years ago. So something has changed, of course, in also the media film industry in Italy. Actually, many things are more changed on the streaming platform industry. So we are talking about Netflix, Amazon, and not any more or less inside the traditional mainstream production that came from the public channel, the public television, the public funds in Italy. But also in this documentary, I use some images about the Black Venus concept that was brought also into the film industry in the 70s. So I hope you enjoyed this first part of the talk and the conversation, and I was really excited, and so I go fast and quickly, but hopefully we can open the Q&A, and you are also be able to ask your question using the chat if you want, or raising your hand.
We have a question from Austin.
Hi.
Hi, Austin.
How are you?
I'm fine.
My question's really abstract and it's a little weird, but you know.
No worry.
So in the film industry, I was wondering. It's a big stretch here, but when Black Panther, the Marvel movie, got released, did you see any change in the job availability for Black people and for non-white actors? Because we know, Black Panther is revolutionary for what it did, and I just want to see if you noticed any changes after the movie came out.
Yeah, no, this is a great question. Also, I released my documentary in 2016, and we have a lot of situation. I made also a great event with, at the time was the president of the Academy of the Oscar. She was African-American, Shirley Bon Isaac. And 2016, 2017 was a time in which there was a click also in the United States for many things. I'm talking about Hollywood, not Netflix or Amazon. They are much more forward. And was the time of the release of Black Panther. Black Panther, I think, even they were just working behind many other projects, African-American, in 2015. So Black Panther, in one sense, is the symbol because the timing of the release coincided with the time of release some months later of many other projects in which there were stories about African-Americans, or in which African-Americans actor and producer were really involved at a huge level, and also the community. There were a lot of sense of belonging and new blog about Black filmmaking, Black women in filmmaking. So there was an explosion of awareness for many professionals who are African descent in the industry. At the same time, this film has been used as a symbol outside the United States. Always I monitor Facebook and Instagram chat of friends. You have to think that there are a lot of African descent Italians who are living abroad like the other Italians. So if you go to London and there are a lot of Italians in London, and you are going to the street and maybe you hear someone speak Italian and you turn your face, maybe it could be black. So I saw that in this conversation, they were really proud about the release of Black Panther. So Black Panther, I think, was a symbol for many African descent outside US. Maybe in Africa, or there were Africans who were critical because they really like the idea of Wakanda. But at the same time, they are really conscious about how many things there are in Africa about mythology that you can use to do stuff like Marvel. Maybe Marvel grab sometimes from African stories like art. I mentioned Picasso grab a lot of stuff from the African art, basically. So we're critical in this sense. We're critical in the sense that, of course, we as Africans also we need to wake to create our own production and not consider that African American can tell all African stories. But was a real powerful push into the industry to create a new mentality. As a matter of fact, that, by the way, was a success at the box office. So it changed also the mind of the people who say, oh, we don't use or we want to produce a all-black cast film because maybe we are not sure to have some income, but this demonstrates the opposite. So open the door to change also this mentality. And now we are in another time in which I think monitoring again the social media, I've seen, for example, in the last 4 or 5 weeks, a lot of people that they bring the same energy and the same proudness that they have for the time, the release of Black Panther, for the release of stories like Bridgerton, for example, the series of Netflix. I've seen the same enthusiastic situation, or a French series produced again by Netflix that is called Lupin. And I've seen the same energy, and particularly also from the social media of Blaq Italiano, because it's a sort of way to say we need to do something like that also in Italy. We need to convince the Italian film industry to do the same. Actually, as a matter of fact, I show you the imaging of the boxer Leone Iacovacci, and this is an amazing story. He was born in Congo. When he was 2 years old, he moved to Italy. At 16, he went to United Kingdom. He learned English. He started to fight box. He went to fight also the First World War. Then he went to France and he learned French, and he started to fight the box in French. He became champion in Italy, and he fought also World War II and finished World War II. Basically, he started to work as a doorman in a I think a condominium in Milan. This is a story, by the way. At the time, there were not a lot of black boxers in Europe. It's the story that every kind of film industry outside Italy, maybe they just produced this story 40 years ago. So we have a treasure of stories that are undertold, but they could be also a potential commercial success, not only a way to make a representation of a minorities. So this is very sad. And so I think there is the great moment of the celebration of some great box office of African-American film industry or other production like Bridgerton, hopefully will bring a new energy into also the Italian film industry. Thank you for your question.
We have a question from Alejandra, and is it Stephanie or Stephen?
It's Steven, but he's like over there. So I wanted to ask you if you could talk about the process of citizenship in Italy a bit more, since you said that if you're born to immigrants in Italy, you have to wait 18 years for citizenship.
Yeah, of course. This is a process that involves only sons of immigrants, and only the sons of immigrants that have parents who are not Italian citizen, because if the parents naturalize when their kids are born in Italy, they are automatically Italian citizens. But what happened that we have a lot of immigrants that even they are in Italy since a lot of years, they didn't naturalize because it's a huge process, the naturalization in Italy. Even they require you to have 10 years of residency, and many immigrants, actually, they made the application. They are still waiting, maybe sometimes after 6 or 7 or 10 years after the application to naturalize. And so what happened that also their kids, when they are born, they are not automatically Italian citizen. They could aspire to become, before 18 years old, Italian citizen only if the parents naturalize before they turn into 18 years old. Otherwise, if both parents are still foreigner, are still not Italian citizen, also the kids, when they reach the age of 18 years old, they have to apply for the citizenship. And sometimes it's not a process that is guaranteed, also for those who are born in Italy. So we have a lot of cases of people, of kids born here that made the application and was not rejected, but was not also accepted. And so they are still in the limbo to live in the country with just a visa. That is the visa usually, and the is a visa as an immigrant, even they are not immigrants. And the only passport that they have are technically the passport of the parents. So this is a very complicated issues that of course involve not only Black Italians, but also if you are a son of a Russian and you are living in Italy, it's the same, or if you are a son of a citizen of the United States, it's the same. So it's a very problematic situation that unfortunately has any solution at the time. I made a documentary about that in 2011, so technically 10 years ago. I interviewed really young people who were 18 or 20 years old at the time, and only the 50% of the people that I interviewed became Italian citizen, and the other 50 are still foreigner. Some of them, they move in another country, and for example, there is a guy that is Italian-Nigerian that he moved to New York 5 years ago, and he joined also the US Navy, and he became American citizen. So this is a paradox of, unfortunately, an entire generation of Italians. Thank you so much, Alejandra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
There was a question in the chat. Can you talk about Black feminism in Italy?
Yeah, even I don't know a lot, and even, yeah, I will try to make an introduction about that. But of course, personally, when I talk about ethnicity and I talk about African descent, I'm used to say that is a part of my mission, and but it's also my motto to tell your own story before others tell it for you. So of course, I don't like sometimes tell the stories of others segment of the society. But of course, tonight I'm alone and I can't do a lot. But I'm talk about African descent women. I have a talk that is, in particular, is about Black Italians, young Black Italians in digital culture. And this talk, for example, I bring a lot of example of important young women, of African young women and African Italian young women who are bringing a new identity and a sense of community in the Italian society, because they created a lot of important blog in the last 16-17 years. There are blogs that basically they started talking about beauty, fashion, hair, Afro hair, because they didn't find product in Italy about that, or they didn't find anyone that can explain you in Italian how to take care about your beautiness. And this was an aggregator to create a lot of connection. And then they start talking about different things that created a sense of community belonging, included feminism, intersectional, and from these blogs, maybe 5-6 years ago, there were young girls that were 16, and now these young girls, they grow up and they became writers. And they are bringing the voice of a segment of this Afro-Italian community, in particular the segment of the Afro-Italian community girls and women and young adult women. So of course there is a lot of great situation. In fashion industry, for example, we had an important designer. Her name is Stella Jeanne. She worked for Armani when she was very young, and now she owned her own brand. Actually, it's a great brand. And Stella is also creating a platform. And I think next days there is the Milan Fashion Week, and in the Milan Fashion Week they will have a digital event about if Black lives matter in fashion, in Italian fashion industry, in which they will aggregate the other 5 Black designers, included 3 of them are women designers. So there are a lot of creativity in which, of course, women are also creating and bringing to the attention not only the struggle for the African descent in Italy, but also the representation of women or Black women in Italy. So this is a very great time. Yeah, I've seen something in the chat. No, hello.
Oh, hello. I wanted to ask a question. I think this adds on to what I believe Maya was talking about. But I heard you mention about like the image of Black women in Italy due to like propaganda and advertising. So I'm wondering if that has significance today in Italy, because I've heard about prostitution amongst African immigrants in Italy. And I'm wondering if it's talked about as much in Italy, or is it like a suppressed, issue, and how women, like African women, are responding to that.
Yeah, it's very difficult, and there is, I think, an anthology that has been released last year. The name of the anthology is Future, and all the anthology is written by Black Italian women, young women, including Jabba Sheikh, that is a very important Italian writer, but there are also 2 really young writer from Turin. And I think that in one of these essays, it's really clear the definition about the connection, again, with the colonialism and the imaging that I show you also about the Black Venus, so the construction of an idea that the Black female body is available for everyone, because it's, I don't know if it's very common, but from the stories of these writers could be seen that was very common that if they were walking in the night or in the evening at the street, even they were 16, 17 years old, there were men that they stopped them thinking that they were prostitutes. But this not happen. Prostitution, it's still existing in Italy, but there are all ethnicity, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't happen with young women of other ethnicity. So again, I think, of course, it's evidence, it's a clear evidence about the common sense created by the racist and colonialism culture that was not only created in the 40s, but is still, unfortunately, alive in a part of the Italian society.
We had a question submitted through the chat, and I think maybe time for one or 2 more after this. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. When you see what has happened in the US over the past decades, do you see similarities and intensity in your country as well?
Yeah, I see some similarity. The similarity is, again, that of course, everything that is a social construct, because racism, by the way, was a social construct to create and force slaves to have free labor for empower some territory. like North America and South America. And then they were able to create a racist culture and also an idea of the other as inferior or a body to exploit. So this is a similarity that happens also in Italy. Of course, in Italy started to do that at the end of 19th century because before they hosted African descent without any problem, or some African descent became also head of state. And so this was the difference that I see is connected to the, for me, the proportion of disproportion. So basically in America, African descent, there is much more inequality in everything. So healthcare, education, imprisonment, everything. So the expectation of life or everything. And in Brazil, it's the same. So Brazil and maybe United States have two similar situation of disparity in the statistic. In Italy, of course, we have the problem of the statistic because we don't have a census by race. So technically, we don't know exactly the numbers. But assuming that the school are public, the healthcare is public, it doesn't matter if also you are not citizen or immigrants. Of course, I think there are less disparity. By the way, you can achieve to have a degree and the cost of the university is 2,000 euros, maybe 2,000 euros per year. So it's much more easy for also a minority to have some welfare in the country. The problem is to be included, by the way, also when you finish university. So you can have an access to have a degree. You can be sure that if happens something and you need a hospital, you have the hospital. But at the same time, for prejudice, bias, it's much more difficult, the process of a real inclusion in the society. And also in the public part of the society. So still now, even there is a great number of people, it's very difficult to find an African descent that is a policeman in a public space. Maybe I never seen in my life, so I knew for sure that there are African descent who are serving in the law enforcement. Maybe they are working undercover in this time of the Republic, but I never seen. It's very difficult to see images like that. So everything that is public, also a bus driver. You will never see a black bus driver in Milan or in Rome. I never seen before. And maybe if there are really few, are 2 or 3, but no more. So this, everything that is a public job that also represents the nation, in particular working like military, law enforcement, public transportation, it's very difficult to find diverse faces, not only African descent, but also people who are descended from South America and Asia.
All right. Time for one last question. Eric, please.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
I just wanted to I just had a question about, I know that pasta instance where there was a commentator saying about the different types of pasta relating to communism, and is there do you know of any other instances, maybe not specifically like that, but different instances sort of like that that you could talk about?
Yeah, there are a lot of things like that. There were much more in the past. So in the past, there were, for example, a lot of product connected to chocolate or coffee that use sometimes names of colonial part, but sometimes also the slogan. So where slogan like Moretto, that mean dark skinned, or they create brand with this name So there were a lot of products like that, and sometimes some of these products were also sold until the 80s, the 90s, and maybe they ended to sell this product not because there were controversy, just because the product maybe was not working anymore or whatever. So anyone, I remember that at the time anyone didn't care about these things. Even in my background, I feel not comfortable sometimes seeing some images or something like that. But it was look like that was a problem of me and not a problem but it's the same. It's the same. For example, I remember 2-3 years ago, there was an advertisement, a commercial made by Dolce & Gabbana, that are two famous stylists, fashion designer. And Dolce & Gabbana, this advertisement was for the Chinese market, the Asian market. And basically there were a lot of protests in China because this commercial was basically showing stereotypes about Asian. And a sexual allusion in the commercial, sexual allusion that maybe can be accepted in the Italian culture, but every nation is different. So every joke could be different if you try to do the same joke in the United States or in Spain or whatever. And so this created a huge controversy in China. And so Dolce & Gabbana were constricted to say, we are sorry, we made a bad commercial, and we don't think these things about Chinese girl, but we are asking an excuse and we are sorry. So sometimes there are episodes like that are connected with the fact that they are not able to manage intercultural relation, because sometimes they really feel that the way that they are using to talk with the other is the right way, without the intention to hurt. I'm saying they didn't want to, also because China represents, I think, the 25% of their market, so they didn't want to create issues, but they create an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you.
I want to take a moment, Professor Carter, if you'd like to offer a close. Really quick, as we end this amazing program, I want to thank Fred. Thank you so much for your time,
Thank you so much.
sharing your work. Everyone, please check out the emails. They have links to Fred's continued work. I do want to apologize for the disruption at the beginning. That was not right for our speaker and our guest of honor, and to those in this space. The situation has been handled, but I apologize for that disruption. And I will give it to Professor Carter to close us out.
Well, thank you. All I'd like to say is that I'm looking forward to your new work. It really looks rich and fantastic, and it's needed. So I'm very excited about looking forward to seeing this. I think everyone should know that there's not a lot of work being done like this. This is very difficult, tedious, long-term commitment to really shedding light on these issues. And Fred has done extraordinary work in this area, and we all thank you for it, because it's going to help a whole generation of people across the world really see what's going on in Italy, what's happened, what that experience is really like, and that's really powerful for that, for those to come, for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. It was a great pleasure. So thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Heather, if you can stay on, if you and Donald.